Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, folks in US land, and a pleasant welcome to another edition of the program Real Talk Liberia on Image TV. This program comes your way Monday to Friday on this platform same time. With me as your regular presenter, David. So wherever you are, however you join us on this platform, I just hope that you are good in health and with a fine mind. Thinking about doing something positive or doing something positive that will benefit you or your nation, Liberia at large. But this too is Mama Liberia, and all we need are positive thinkers, people with positive thinking that can move our nation forward. So wherever you are, however you join us, a pleasant welcome to you. Stay tuned, don't you go away as we bring you trending issues on this platform. But we would like to apologize for the noise in the background as we are reporting outside of our studio today. So we ask that you bear with us as we do what we do. Once again, a pleasant welcome. Stay tuned as we take this break to be right back.
Sir, would you be changing your policy or reviewing your policy with the United States government?
We'll still continue on the old policy. Yes, thank you.
Praise for the coup came from Libya, Ethiopia, Cuba, and other Eastern Bloc countries. U.S. condemnation of the killings was swift. Yet 6 weeks after the coup, a previously scheduled American delegation arrived to offer support.
To have the opportunity to come and visit with you and the other officials of your government to discuss the needs of your peoples and to also discuss future relations between our two nations.
Samuel Doe represented a rebellion of the country people, the original inhabitants. The population of Liberia, the majority being country people, sort of liked that. It showed that the Americo-Liberians were no longer dominant, and there was a popular change. So the United States had no reason to change that, or try to go against that, and we accepted Samuel Doe like the people of Liberia did.
They had no idea of the workings of the international political system. They had no concrete, more rational understanding of the social dynamics on the ground. So within a year or two, that government, the People's Redemption Council, became more corrupt and all the governments that preceded it.
But for the Americans, particularly Ronald Reagan, the new Cold War warrior in the White House, Doe was a useful ally.
It's been a pleasure to welcome Liberian Head of State Samuel K. Doe on his first visit to the United States. It's especially fitting that we should be meeting this year as the United States and Liberia celebrate 120 years of diplomatic relations. Our discussions gave us an opportunity to reaffirm the special friendship and mutual respect between our two countries. Clearly, a firm bond unites Liberians and Americans who have come together professionally and socially throughout the years.
The U.S. strategy for Liberia was spelled out in a then classified White House document. Liberia was important to protect valuable U.S. facilities and military access rights, to protect U.S. private investment, to prevent the spread of Libyan, Soviet, and other hostile influences. And, because of the unusual historic relationship, to avoid a major defeat or embarrassment for the United States through Liberia's political or economic disintegration. This was Doe's proudest moment. He did everything Washington wanted, including criticizing other African states for not being sufficiently anti-communist. He also challenged some African leaders to fistfights for insulting Ronald Reagan.
Doe also at the time was said to have learned how to speak English better by watching the great communicator communicate on videotape. And he had a satellite dish set up so that he could watch all of Reagan's speeches.
In the first 4 years of Doe's regime, he received almost $500 million from the United States, more than any previous Liberian administration.
Doe managed somehow to convince that there was an East-West rivalry there, and that American money would be helpful in keeping out the Soviet threat, which seems ridiculous, and was. But Doe did expel, I think, all of the Soviet diplomats at the time. It was crude, but it seemed to be helpful.
We had the dilemma, do we support this gentleman or do we not? And initially the Cold War tilted us in favor of supporting him because we got reciprocal treatment. We were supporting certain governments that were clearly not going to use their assistance for development, but use it for other reasons. And we supported people like Mobutu in Zaire and a few others.
In spite of American aid, life in Liberia grew worse. Streets were filthy, development stopped, poverty increased, healthcare and education collapsed. Doe considered the national treasury his own.
Doe and his people had about a third of the $220 million economy. They had those people. They could basically take a third of it for whatever purpose they wanted, for buying cars, for buying clothes, whatever.
Doe's corruption was becoming an embarrassment to the U.S. The White House pressured Doe to return Liberia to civilian rule. Finally, in 1985, elections were held, with the largest turnout in Liberian history. Doe manipulated the election and declared himself the winner.
It was very clear that it was stolen. I mean, I went to a barracks where people were voting often, marking ballots and stuffing them in boxes. And I went out to a polling place 20, 30 miles out of Monrovia where people came in to vote and soldiers were there to intimidate them as they were marking their ballots, and so they would end up voting for Doe.
I solemnly swear, I, Samakanya Doe, solemnly swear that I will support, uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution, and bylaws, of the Republic of Liberia,
He should have lost, but he rigged the election. But at that time, all West African elections were rigged. It was a very normal thing to do for the government to win the election, even though they may have had less than a majority of the votes. So we did not trouble us at all.
Now here comes the head of state, riding a beautiful Mercedes-Benz, a 1000 SEL.
Doe's inauguration was not celebrated in all quarters.
To attend the inaugural church.
I remember describing it in a radio interview at the time as similar, at least from what I could pick up, to the sadness that people felt in the United States when John Kennedy was shot.
We thought that Doe was going to lead us, but Doe betrayed us. He's a criminal. We don't want to catch Doe. We want to bring Doe before justice.
Thomas Kuyempa from the Gio tribe of Nimba County in the northeast was one of the 17-man junta that had brought Doe to power. Kuyempa fled the country after he and Doe fell out. Now, 1 month after the elections, he entered Monrovia with rebel soldiers to challenge Doe. He declared he had the blessings of both the U.S. and the Liberian people. But in fact, U.S. embassy officials had tipped Doe off about the possibility of this coup. Kuyempa's troops quickly rounded up Doe's officials. They took over the national radio and television station, and for 6 hours Liberians believed that Doe had been overthrown. But then, forces loyal to Doe arrived on the scene to smother the revolt. The victorious Kuyempa soon turned victim.
Hey, we are here. So we got here just in time. I mean, it's a prize. We've got it. It's a miracle.
George Bully, Doe's closest advisor, celebrated victory.
And I think it's the best thing that's ever happened.
Kuyempa's body was taken to the executive mansion to be viewed by Doe.
Fellow Liberians, I take this opportunity to inform the nation that the coup has failed. I'm still the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Liberia and head of state.
It was a victory, but Doe had other troubles. He was losing the support of his main ally, the United States.
We were starting to get quite tough with him, and the fact that the Cold War was ending, I think, was no coincidence. We had less need for his cooperation. I remember I went to see him with Secretary of State Schultz in January of 1987, and he was very upset. Doe saying, I'm your best friend, I kicked out the Libyan embassy that was here, and I support you all over in the UN, even in the non-aligned movement. I'm always one of 3 or 4 African countries that's on your side, and all the rest are against you. And what are you doing? You're cutting off our military assistance, and you're lowering our economic assistance. It's all one-sided now. I'm your friend, but you're not my friend anymore. So he understood that things were changing.
Schultz's warning was more diplomatic.
Fiscal austerity in the short run is essential to long-term prosperity. We're getting a little fiscal austerity at home, and it hurts. The situation calls for statesmanlike decisions. The result is not usually immediate, but there is no more important task.
He actually became hysterical with Secretary Schultz at the time. Even though later everything was friendly, there was a nice dinner.
And Schultz said, well, we'll send you some help. So they sent over 17 bean counters, basically, from the State Department. And they were just despairing. When I saw them, they were basically packing up their stuff and going home and saying this is a hopeless endeavor. And they left.
With or without U.S. support, Doe was bent on staying in power. Since Queen-Pa's insurrection, Doe had brutally suppressed any dissent in Nimba County. Time and again, he would send soldiers of his tribe, the Kras, on a campaign of terror against Manos and Guios. A tribal war.
And those who consider to be innocent in Nimba at this particular time, I'm appealing to them to leave Nimba immediately, or else their relatives, their children would never be seen again.
When I first came to Liberia in 1986, when I first started this job, one of the things that impressed me was that it was one of the least tribal countries in the region. A lot of intermarriage, and people weren't at all hung up about their tribe. They could be quite proud of it. They could say, this cook shop has real Vai cooking here, whatever. And I saw that gradually evaporate, and I think that was the most damaging, the most corrosive effect of President Doe's government. For people up in Nimba County, nothing has ever been worse than what was happening to them. The army was sent into Nimba, and they would go around all the houses, they would drag out young men, they would beat them, some of them they would kill them. The army created enormous ill feeling, and that drove the boys over the border to become rebels, and they were just there waiting to be organized by Charles Taylor.
Charles Taylor, an old crony of Samuel Doe, crossed the Liberian border on Christmas Eve, 1989. A mixed Gola and Americo-Liberian, Taylor graduated from an American college and broke out of a Massachusetts jail, where he had been held after Doe accused him of embezzlement. Now he was back with Libyan-trained guerrillas and rumored to have the backing of affluent Liberians who wanted to get rid of Doe.
This war is about justice, it's about equality, and about fair play. This war is about the right to self-determination and a safeguard of the sovereignty of this nation.
Despite his rhetoric, his war turned into a war of retribution. Thousands of Manos and Guios joined Taylor, seeking vengeance against Doe's Kras and their allies, the Mandingos. Atrocities were routine. Entire villages were abandoned by people trying to escape the fighting. Families were burnt alive, children raped and decapitated. It was ethnic cleansing at its most cruel, and much of it was carried out by soldiers who were themselves children.
People has put us together, gave our arm to fight our brothers and sisters to get rich out of us. And those little ones that are holding the guns, they are not intelligent, they cannot think. And a little boy, even if you are in a home, just watch a little boy, how he can behave in the home. And imagine you take gun, you give it to him.
Boys got high on power as well as drugs. I spoke to one in a refugee camp in Ghana.
I'm Marshall G. Colley. I was 15 years old when I joined the MPFL in 1991. There was a certain leaf in the bush, we call it war face. You take the leaf, you squeeze it in your hand and put it in your eye, and you'll see that your eyes will be red, like for some 1 week. Yeah, so we used to call it leaf war face. You just want to make yourself like a kind of a boo-boo man that people will be afraid of. Like when you take your eye on somebody, I mean, they will be afraid. You will never be afraid when you're taking the drugs. Actually, you will be over brave, and all the things you will be doing, I mean, you will just be going, you will be doing it unconsciously, but you will be very brave. There's nothing that will move you. You just smile, laugh all day. As soon as they shoot here, you will let to go there.
During these months of terror, Liberians were still so emotionally tied to the U.S. that they believed America would save them from themselves. When U.S. Navy helicopters landed in Monrovia, it was thought that they had come to rescue Liberians. Instead, they were there to evacuate American citizens.
Due to the potential threat to lives, all Americans are strongly advised to depart Liberia immediately. In order to assist Americans, we have arranged special commercial flights to transport American citizens and their immediate families from Liberia to the neighboring country of Côte d'Ivoire.
I'm scared to death, and I'm worried for my country, and I'm scared for everybody.
What do you think the United States should do?
Step in and take over.
That's right.
We were just given a direct order from the White House not to do anything. But I remember meetings where Scowcroft's deputy, Robert Gates, who had come from the CIA, he was denigrating the historical relationship. He says it's meaningless, it doesn't govern us anymore, we treat Liberia just like any other country, and we have no real interest there.
Doe also wanted the U.S. to step in to keep himself in power.
Being a lover of democracy, America would have stepped in to put stop to the bloodshed. But then I don't know what they are thinking of. But we are still hoping that America will join us in searching for peace for this country.
By mid-1990, Taylor's troops had captured most of the country and were advancing rapidly on Monrovia. Doe's situation was growing desperate.
We had an aircraft available in Freetown ready to pick him up. We told him that, but actually I was supposed to go there and say, okay, now's the time, get your family and everyone and get in the plane, let's go. But I never got to that point. It was vetoed.
We are not going to let any criminal be taken out of this country by anyone. No one is taking Doe out. He will be caught by us or killed by us.
I think we could have done some things differently at the end. but the Bush administration pulled us back and told us that they didn't want us to do that because they didn't want to accept any degree of moral responsibility for Charles Taylor becoming the next head of state of Liberia. I think that was a mistake.
I felt that the White House had an error of judgment at that point. Whatever would have happened with Taylor after that, at least the country would have been spared the devastation of its infrastructure and all of its facilities there.
Liberians sought help everywhere. Finally, it was the 16-nation economic community of West African states that created ECMOG, a special military peacekeeping force.
Je me suis impliqué, disons, dans le processus de paix au Liberia en ma qualité de président de la CEDEAO. Mais comme je l'ai dit plus tôt, c'est vrai que aucun Africain, aucun homme cœur que c'est.
To say no to America. America is fighting Doe because Doe 1 is going to be developed, period.
The African peacekeepers set up headquarters in this building at Monrovia's port. Here, on September 9th, 1990, Doe arrived to meet the force commander. He had no idea that Prince Johnson, the leader of yet another faction, was gunning for him.
No, don't do this to me. Look, I came to the American ambassador. I'm here to make a decision now.
We could hear voices outside. There was an argument starting between Doe's people who were outside and Prince Johnson's people. And the voices got more and more angry.
Now, from that point, the shooting started. And Elizabeth Blunt and Mr. Ivan Face were under a table, and fortunately for me, I was in that particular room they were in.
I lay on the floor along the wall, window wall. And then I could just hear the sounds of this tremendous gun battle, and it went on and on and on. Every time you thought the shooting had stopped, it started again.
When they started shooting from downstairs, Doe came in here and was surrounded by his bodyguards. And they refused, even the shooting, all the bodyguards fell right in the middle of this room. All of them fell on top of Doe.
I had no idea what was going on, and this went on for about an hour and a half. It was the early afternoon. And then eventually it died away, and we waited, and then it seemed to be safe to come out. And I came out into the corridor, and there was a sort of washroom opposite. There were bodies in the corridor and sort of piled into the washroom. And there were bodies in the front hall of the building at the foot of the stairs where we'd been standing to watch the president go up. And then I was being really stupid at this point. It took me a few minutes to say, but what's happened to the president? And they said they carried him.
Samuel Doe! Samuel Doe! You see thousands, thousands! I said I
Doe was driven through the streets of Monrovia. The next day, he was pleading for his life.
So please listen me, so I'll tell you.
While Prince Johnson was seeking the backing of the U.S.
Emergency over. Sunshine. If you are listening to me, this emergency over. Tango, come in. I want to see Mr. Porter or the U.S. ambassador over.
It's certainly true the Americans were in touch, not just with Prince Johnson, but with all the parties. And what was said and what was encouraged, I don't know.
Where we remember Zion.
Doe was castrated and his ears cut off by Johnson's men. He would die a day later. But even after his death, he had his supporters who tore through the streets, shouting, "No, four of my family among them." 2/3 of the country fled their homes. 6,000 children were made to kill. The towns and villages I knew as a child had all become killing fields. More and more factions cropped up, and some Ecomog soldiers joined in the plunder. There was no respite.
We need your peace, we need your love. Stop the fighting, stop the war.
Liberians were exhausted and desperate for peace. Numerous peace agreements were brokered and violated, but peace only came when there was nothing left to destroy.
We need your love, we need your peace.
Finally, after 7 years of mayhem, elections were called for July 19, 1997. There were 13 candidates. The campaign trail for Charles Taylor, who already controlled much of the country, led ironically to the Samuel Doe Soccer Stadium. People sang, "He killed my ma, I will vote for him. He killed my pa, I will vote for him," hoping that a vote for Taylor would mean an end to the bloodshed. Liberians lined up to vote in overwhelming numbers. It was their first presidential election in a decade. When the ballots were counted and certified as fair by international observers, including Jimmy Carter, Taylor had won with 75% of the vote.
And I promise you today that I will not be a wicked president. But I say to you also that I have no intentions of being a weak president during this particular period.
When Taylor assumed the presidency, people hoped that he would turn the country around. So far, not much has happened. Instead, in no time, Taylor has become an international pariah, implicated in the destabilization of his neighbors, and accused of fueling diamond wars and growing rich. Just another strongman. When Monrovia spruced itself up to commemorate 150 years of Liberian independence, it was the monument dedicated to unity between the natives and the settlers that got special attention. And it was here that a wedding party stopped to take a